Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. Man, remember when we were kids, that cool movie that came out, Red Dawn, something we all fantasized about? What if the Russians invade? What if they're just on the other side of the board and they start lobbing missiles and we all got to go get our guns and fight, and we'll join our friends in a little platoon and we'll do ambushes. It'll be great. I wonder if in Russia in the 80s, they had a movie about the Americans lining up on their border and teaming up with the Ukrainians and coming across and firing missiles. And now they got to grab their guns and fight for their homeland, because now it's kind of happening. David Hamilton back on. Welcome. You're going to be my first guest on the James Show from America's Future series. I mean, how close is this to like the bizarro Red Dawn scenario?
Yeah, go Wolverines, right?
Hey, look at you. 4 points for David for getting the Wolverines reference. Garrett, you got that? Thank you. Okay, you're on the board. Go ahead, David.
So actually, the Chinese do believe, and almost every Chinese citizen believes, that America invaded North Korea in order to invade China. So those two countries believe that we are poised, ready to invade them at any time. And so it's only because of their deterrence that we don't. Now, it's a little disturbing to me that this is not the main news story. I mean, I just heard about pieces falling from the AT&T Stadium. Well, this is more the sky is falling, and not only should this be the main story that we talk about during the news cycle, but it should probably be the only topic that we're talking about. We are literally talking about the possibility of World War III, and we talk about it as if whether the Cowboys will win again next weekend. And I'm stunned by this.
Well, listen, the news media is quite derelict in their duty. They don't want to make their outgoing guy look dumb. They don't want to make Team Blue look dumb. And so, yeah, there's a couple of big things that just happened in the last 24 hours. I agree. In a normal world with normal, sensible people on media platforms, this would be a bigger story. So we had told you about yesterday, Biden was okaying Ukrainians using American surface-to-surface missiles in Russia. And then since then, the spokesman for the Kremlin said that, they better watch it because, the wrong strike could spark a nuclear threat. And then right before the James Show started, I heard that the Putin spokesman say, well, we're not saying we have plans to nuke anybody, but if we did, we'd start with the UK.
Both sides have plans to nuke everyone. Let's be clear about that. If you attack me, I have a plan. War games, we all saw that movie. Would you like to play a game? We all do the scenario planning, and it would make perfect sense if Moscow, the missiles they're talking about can reach Moscow. If they started bombing New York, I like to think that we would probably send nukes to whoever's bombing New York. And I happen to be at New York, so I'd like this not to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So the question becomes, David, is this reckless or is this intent on the Biden administration?
There's no excuse for this. We run a nonpartisan think tank and speaker series. We aren't partisan. I haven't voted in a primary in 15 years. Okay, so this isn't partisan, but this is the craziest, stupid, most irresponsible thing I've seen in decades. The idea that first off, I think we jawboned this war to begin with, saying that NATO needed to accept Ukraine, Ukraine needed to join NATO. We then gave him power and money by authorizing Nord Stream 2. We reduced our own energy capability, which made him richer because Russia is a gas station disguised as a country. We looked silly and awful and stupid in Afghanistan, and we continue to blunder and stumble ourselves. And you on this station and others I've been on have all said we have to worry about this escalating, and that if you threaten a bear and you shove it into the corner, it will eventually use its claws and its teeth, and these are nuclear claws and teeth. This is a real threat, and we need to be grown-ups now and figure out a way to negotiate a negotiated withdrawal.
All right. I mean, how many Russian missiles could fly over the Canadian border before we'd freak out a little bit?
We would be within our rights to retaliate. This is how World War I and World War II happened, right? They all were, incremental issues with stepping up, and then and something can go wrong, right? There can be an accident that causes or a misunderstanding. Yeah, cooler heads need to prevail. And by the way, if I was Putin, I probably wouldn't launch a missile, but I would probably have a nuclear meltdown in the largest nuclear energy plant in Europe and say, oops.
All right. Well, thanks for the warm, fuzzy feeling, David Hamilton. Tell them about America's Future series.
As I said, nonpartisan think tank and speaker series. We focus on U.S. global competitiveness, national security. We host events on these subjects and others. We raise money for worthy military causes. We have our dual-use tech summit down in Austin. I hope people can come to that. We're going to honor Admiral McCraven in September with General Petraeus and others. So just go to our website, americasfutureseries.com. Love to have all of your listeners who are fantastic participate in our events.
All right. That's David Hamilton, America's Future Series. I want to ask you some of the same questions here. This is a clear escalation. This is an obvious act of war. We now have Russia coming back saying, there is a nuclear retaliation that could be had if the wrong missile falls in the wrong place. And we're not saying we have a plan, but if we were going to start nuking people, it would start with the UK. The question is he reckless? Is he just demented? Is he doing this on purpose? Is he trying to create chaos for Trump on his way out? Just throw a middle finger to the establishment here, deal with this bag of mess. Or does this bring up, because you have a memory that's longer than a goldfish. You have a memory that's longer than one of these kids that's just messing around on their cell phone all day. You remember there was a Trump impeachment over this Ukraine stuff. You remember there was a weird connection between Hunter Biden and this Ukraine stuff. You remember Joe Biden lying about it. You remember the laptop being covered up by 51 former intelligence officials, and the FBI held it for an entire year and never did anything with it. What's going on with all that? Why would the FBI cover up evidence of a crime if there's not something bigger behind it? So what is this weird connection? Why is it that Joe Biden can go down there and brag when he's running for president in 2018 that he got the Ukrainian prosecutor fired? Remember that story? Well, then I called up and said, you're not going to get the $1 billion unless you fire that prosecutor. And they said, you don't have the authority to do that. And I said, well, son of a bee.
I remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time.
So look, now looking back, we didn't know at the time he said that, when he said that his son's on the payroll. His son's getting money from millions from these people. We didn't know that was suspicious even when he said it. We didn't know that, 4 or 5 years later, that Donald Trump would be impeached for basically having the same conversation. Hey, what's going on with this prosecution over here? What are y'all looking into? He didn't even ask for anyone to get fired. He just asked what the hell's going on. He just wanted to look into something. Can you give me some info? Same thing. How come it was an impeachable offense for Trump, but for Joe Biden, it was a bragging point on his campaign trail? And then why are we sending them, $250 billion is what they've already sent them of your money? How are we doing like the 18th act of war against the second most powerful country on planet Earth, the Russians? What, are we just going to be engaged in a conflict until we can win a land war in Russia? What kind of idiocy is that? If it doesn't make sense that it's just a bad decision. This guy has to be compromised. This guy has to be on the take. They have to have something on him. Nothing else makes sense at this point, because this is not a smart move. This is not what's good for the country. This is not what's good for Ukraine or Russia either. 800-288-9227. Joe in Southlake, you're on WBAP. What do you think, sir?
On target. James, you're on target. I completely agree with you, and that's exactly some of the things I was going to bring up. This is why it's so important to not be compromised, to not be paid off or have something done under the table or behind the wall. Exactly, because this is what it can lead to, being paid off and keeping their mouth shut. And for him to do what he did, it's just another reason, James, over the whole government, what they've done. We could go just department to department, why this Democratic Party, James, agree or disagree, they need to be exposed. The American people need to know who we're really dealing with here and how they've been handling the people's business and how they have not only compromised this entire country and our national security, our borders, everything, what they've done. They need to have those people cleared that he's nominated to have in these key positions so we can expose the Democratic Party, because I believe going forward, James, strongly, a lot of these hardheads are not going to listen. We need to really expose them for who they have really been and say, is this the kind of people you want running your government?
Well, hang on.
This is what's
I don't think you're going far enough. I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't think you're going far enough. So the FBI agents, the 51 of them that signed the former intelligence officials and current intelligence officials that signed the letter saying the Hunter laptop was fake, they were all in power under Trump. Trump was the president when that happened. So having Trump being the president didn't prevent that from happening. Also, they sat on it for a year. So they got the laptop back in 2019. They didn't do anything with it until the shop owner decided, well, it's been a whole year. I'm going to turn over a copy of this to Rudy Giuliani. Those people that were in the FBI then were in place under the Trump administration. So Trump being president is not enough. Trump having appointment powers is not enough. I need some people to just be real open and clear-eyed about this and think about the idea of, do we need an FBI? Do we need a CIA? Do we need an NSA? Because I've gotten a lot of Republicans, and this is a libertarian in me coming out, agreeing with me that we don't need a Department of Education. We don't need a Department of Housing and Urban Development. We don't need a Department of Health and Human Services. But I'm saying we got to strip back even further than that.
Well, James, I'll say one thing in closing. The deep state was alive and well then and has been for some time. And it's all Soros and everyone else that has the big money. We don't know what was offered to them. And one final thing, talking about the border, I heard it mentioned one time, how do we know a lot of these people that have been for open borders and not against it haven't been paid off by either the deep state or the cartels, because they do it all the time? Good show, James.
Thank you very much. I don't think most of them have been paid off. I think they've just trained these people to be barking seals to repeat what the other ones say, because they all do the same thing. Like, J.D. Vance is weird. Isn't everything weird? The Olympic opening ceremony was Dionysus. It wasn't the Ten Commandments. Not one person actually thought themselves. They're just parrots. That's what they've been trained. That's what college taught them was good. That's what they got good grades for in college. Just repeat what your professor says. You'll get an A. 800-288-9227 if you want to jump in on the conversation. 800-288-9227. Coming up next, Supreme Court said the execution of this recent guy, Robert Roberson, cannot be halted by lawmakers' subpoena. I'm going to ask my lawyer buddy, Jeremy Rosenthal, about that next. It's The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. While we still can, before we get nukes. It's the weirdest thing. I guess this might just be a coincidence, but on the breaks there, we were dealing with some production issues here at WBAP, and the government just sent us, you know how we have to play public service announcements? We got a new one in that we're supposed to plug in immediately.
And cover.
Be sure and remember what Bert the Turtle just did, friends, because every one of us must remember to do the same thing. That's what this film is all about. Duck and cover.
Boy, is that like some of the worst advice we've ever gotten in PSA history. My next guest, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer, back on The James Show. Jokes aside, there has been at least the rhetoric of a nuclear escalation in the Russian theater. How concerned are you?
I'm very concerned. I think right now we have to take seriously the fact that Putin very publicly changed their nuclear doctrine yesterday. And the thing that I'm most concerned about is we see an escalation. Everybody acknowledges that the allowance of Ukrainians to use TACMs and probably Storm Shadow, the British equivalent, which has U.S. technology in it, has crossed a Russian red line. The first salvo they fired last night didn't hit anything important, but it doesn't mean that they won't hit something important. But, James, my point is, why are we doing this? Now, they keep saying they're doing this for, quote-unquote, leverage, but, a handful of missiles being shot at Russia at this point in time when the Russians are, kind of solidifying their gains and there's no hope of the Ukrainians doing anything to respond. I think the only thing that's changed in the equation is Donald Trump coming into it. And I see this as a dangerous gambit by the Biden administration, by Tony Blinken and the others, into trying to do something that will essentially trap Donald Trump into something that he has to deal with regarding continuing the war, despite the fact he said he wants to negotiate.
Well, we were spitballing earlier on the James Show, me and the listeners, and it doesn't make sense that we need this new weapon to achieve any sort of goals on the battlefield. And it doesn't make sense that he would want to escalate this just to leave chaos for Trump on his way out. You don't risk World War III for that. The one thing, the variable that we all have a question mark over is that weird connection that he's had with Ukraine that predates his days as president. His son was getting paid a ton of money. We played that audio from the campaign trail where he was like, yeah, I got the Ukrainian prosecutor fired. And they said, well, you don't have the power to do that. And he's like, you're not getting the $1 billion. Well, son of a bitch. That whole that thread. And then we connected it to when Trump got impeached the first time. It was over a call to Ukraine. So there's been a lot of irrational actions around Joe Biden, Ukraine. And the thing that makes the most sense is this guy is just compromised out the wazoo.
Oh, he is. And so that's part of the thing we have to consider right now. And this is a political statement I'm going to make. Just bear with me.
We're okay with that.
Well, the fact is that when Trump won, it caught us by surprise. Now, James, I'm sure you weren't surprised. A lot of us weren't, because we were actually looking at data, not at emotion. But the folks in power really presumed, I believe, that everything is going to continue under Kamala Harris in some form. She'll win, and there'll be a replacement for Jake Sullivan, but ultimately the war will continue in some form. There was no negotiated settlement on the table. That's Trump's point of view. So they weren't really worried about it. But all of a sudden now they're faced with a Donald Trump showing up with a new staff, with my friend Pete Hegseth as defense secretary, with Tulsi Gabbard coming in. All these changes would mean there's going to be changes. That means that the policy is going to be seeking a negotiated settlement. So I think this is their last chance. Tony Blinken 3 days ago said we're sending $9 more billion over, and now they've opened this policy up. And remember, James, how many times have we been told that if we just give them tanks, that's going to help them win, or we just give them F-16s? This is all just trying to keep the war protracted, to your point regarding Biden. A lot of people are getting rich off the war. The military-industrial complex, a lot of folks in Ukraine. One of their former presidents has increased his wealth by 25%. Really? How did that happen? So I think a lot of this is motivated by politics, by the fact that the politics of Donald Trump goes towards ending the war. The politics of a potential Kamala Harris's team would have been to continue the protraction of the war. So I think that's a lot of what's going on here regarding this escalation at this point in time.
Dude, you're so nice about it, because it seems like such an impossible lie that they're telling, because you're a bit of a war historian. When's the last time a ground invasion worked on a foreign army trying to storm Moscow? Like, when's the last time Russia lost a land war in Asia?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, they're discounting 300 years of history, which you're referring to. Yes, Putin is not impressed. As a matter of fact, Putin right now is pressured by his own government to do something. And let me ask you a question. What if Putin decides to go ahead and use a small nuke in Kursk to take out the Ukrainians? What are we going to do then? Because he can do that, and it's like he's hitting Russia territory. He's not striking anything that we have an agreement to control, but he's going to wipe out, 3,000 or 4,000 Ukrainians. So what do we do then?
The media would call it a diplomatic victory for the Biden administration. Look, he's got Putin nuking himself. How brilliant are we? Now, the guy's compromised. That's the only thing that makes sense, because even dementia doesn't explain this, Tony. No. All right, tell them about Project Sentinel. How you guys doing over there?
Oh, Project Sentinel, you can go check out our constitutionally based philosophies and policy recommendations, and that. And then always follow me on X, because I'm always tweeting interesting or Xing things or tweeting things, whatever you call it. And I always enjoy joining us for our conversations. Thanks for having me, James.
All right, there he is, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer on the James Show. Check out Project Sentinel. He's the president of that outfit these days, and they're doing good work over there. Yeah, and seriously, I really don't have a better explanation. Isn't that weird that dementia is not it doesn't even explain it? All right, your thoughts, 800-288-9227. Also, coming up next, there's a report from this group called Oxfam that the World Bank operated, from your tax dollars through the UN. They have lost track of $41 billion in their climate change programs. Is this the biggest theft in history? Is climate change the biggest scam in human history? Details coming up on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. If you want to jump in on the conversation, 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. A lot to talk about. The Trump appointments that are still coming in. We'll cover some of those coming up in a couple segments, but I'll go ahead if you have some opinions on that. Get on the phone because we're about to talk about that. Also, this escalation with the Russia situation. We're now shooting American missiles into Russia to hit sites and it already happened. Like we did a volley already, and Russia says, "Look, you're lucky you didn't hit anything important because if you hit the wrong thing, we are considering a nuclear escalation." And then, oh no! So that was from the Kremlin spokesman. I mean, technically yesterday, but it's really 2 days ago because we're like 18 hours behind them. I think it's like Friday there or something. But then Putin was asked about, the nuclear escalation, and he's like, "Listen, y'all, I'm not saying we have plans to nuke anybody. We don't have any plans to nuke anybody. But if we did, we'd start with the UK." So, nice and scary. What could possibly go wrong? Kelly in Scurry, you're on WBAP. Is this like Scurry Rosser Scurry? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, James, it is.
Well, thanks for calling in. What can I do for you?
Hey, listen, we were talking about, you cover a lot of things, but talking about the people getting rich off of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. The people who aren't getting rich, the American people. Our money is being drained. Our taxpayer dollars is being drained for everything and everyone except to better our lives. And it's like the Biden administration, I don't really know over the past 4 years who's actually run the country. But it seems like it's wanting to just destroy our country, like bring it to its knees for some reason. And I'm not sure why. Well,
I have a few answers for that, but you're pointing out something that for me and you, this is like important and kind of makes me want to pull my hair out too. But imagine right now you're a parent and your kid's in the military. And we're looking at the idea of them providing service and support, even though there's not boots on the ground. Someone's handing over those missiles and training them how to fire them, or aiming them for them, or hitting the button at least, flying drones and whatnot. We have people actively protecting Ukraine's border, but our border is wide open. And there was a nice media hissy fit when Trump said he would use the military to secure our border. They're like, "Oh my God, he's turning the military loose inside our own borders." Yeah, the military's supposed to be on our own borders. It's not supposed to be everywhere else but America. Y'all have that backwards. It's not. In fact, it's only supposed to be out of our borders and limited little excursions here, not as like a permanent fixture.
Yeah, well, it's just like all the people coming across our border illegally, and they say, "Well, President Trump called them criminals." Okay, if you cross a border illegally, you have committed a crime. Hence, you are a criminal.
Well, look,
I mean, that's how I'm saying it.
Now you're getting to the other point that you brought up. You're like, it's almost like they want to destroy the country. Okay, well, I put these people in like 4 different categories here because they're the people who think that they're helping. They've just been convinced of bad economic policy or bad social policy. They think it's genuinely good. But there are a bunch of people that want to destroy America for different reasons. If you're driven by like a Marxist ideology or socialism, the greatest impediment to the spread of Marxism, socialism, communism, whatever you want to call it around the world is America, and more specifically the American military. So that would be your number one enemy on the planet is the American military. Also, if you hate this country based on some sort of racial animus, they're colonizers. They don't deserve to be here. They stole the land from the indigenous. They enslaved the Africans, and then they kept them under a system of apartheid, with Jim Crow and segregation or whatnot. You would think this is a pretty evil place and you would like to see it get its comeuppance. And this isn't a place that deserves to be good or successful or prosperous. Yeah, they would like to tear it down. So some people mean it. For different reasons. Some people mean it when they want to destroy America. Some people are just convinced to go along. These are the people that wear a mask alone in their car. They could just be convinced to do anything. And that's a good 10 to 20% of the population.
And it seems like the rest are, I find it hard to believe that so many Americans they're like sheep to a slaughter. They believe a lot of this that the Democrats pour out. They believe what they say, and it's like, well, are you serious?
You live in Scurry, okay? So you actually see the real world. You see where food comes from. You drive past a cow every day to go pick up your kids from school, right? The dude, where I'm sitting, where I'm broadcasting from, you don't see cows. You don't even see grass. I had a pair of shoes that I only wear downtown. They don't even have dirt on them because I don't walk on grass around here. These people really do live in a bubble. And if all you see on TV or hear from your college professors or your favorite actors or musicians, and you live in this bubble, they don't ever hear what you believe and what you think and really what the culture is like outside in the hinterlands and in the bug tussles of the world. And that's kind of the reason why I use that term is so people like you from Scurry, people from Alba, people from Quitman or Palestine, they know exactly what I'm talking about when I say that. It is a different world. It's a different culture. And if I drive 2 hours in any direction from here, I'm in a completely different society. I'm in a society where you don't have to lock your front door of your house. You don't have to lock your car when you're in the parking lot. Nothing is locked up at the CVS. Nothing is behind. Do y'all know this, city people, that if you drive in 2 hours in any direction, there's nothing locked up at the Dollar General or at the Walgreens? It's amazing. They treat you like an adult. And it's so odd to come back into this blue area and be treated like this and have people okay with it. And I'm running out of patience for people who are still falling for climate change because my next story is here.
Right.
The Oxfam Bank, they did a audit of all of these climate projects that have been pouring through the UN, almost exclusively funded by you and me, Kelly. $41 billion they can't account for. This is the biggest theft in history, and I'm tired of people falling for it. I really am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, me too. Me too. I think how much better our education system would be with some of the money that we're giving away, and our deficit just keeps growing. I'm thinking I've got a lot of suggestions, and I'm sure you do too.
Wow.
It's not hard to figure out some things you can do to, cut back on money and put it elsewhere, because I know like the educational system is really poor, and I'm ex-military. I'm a veteran, and my grown son joined the military, and he brought boys home with him on the weekend, and I would ask them, when you took your oath, what did you take your oath to defend? And 1 out of 10 was able to tell me to defend the Constitution.
What were the rest of them swearing on?
To defend the government, to defend the president, to defend people. They could not say to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
All right, Kelly, get off my show. You're freaking me out. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right.
All right. That's Kelly and Scurry. I didn't need to hear that. These guys are given a gun, told to go overseas. They don't even know what they're fighting for. They're like, hey, man, I'm just trying to get some money for school. But yeah, that's a real story. Go check that out on WBAP.com. There's more details on this. But the bankers at the World Bank, they just lost track of $41 billion in their climate change programs. We need to stop all of those climate change programs. Every single one. And you know what happens, like would cascade down with the consequences of doing that? You'd be able to do things like pick your own light bulb again. 100-watt light bulb would be legal again if only we would get rid of this. Cafe standards for your cars would necessarily disappear because it's all based on that lie. Your bumper, remember how like when you were a kid, if you bumped into something, your bumper was made of solid steel and it wouldn't been for nothing. Now it's a piece of plastic that crumples if you run into a shopping cart. Yeah, that would go away. All kinds of little things, all these dumb recycling programs, the low flush toilet, ethanol subsidies, and putting ethanol in the gas so it gunks up your lawnmower. All that just goes away if we can just let go of some of these big old myths. And in the meantime, while you're having every facet of your life tweaked and turned and oppressed all the way down to your paper straw, these people are flushing away $41 billion of your dollars. What a privilege. Oh, thanks a lot, government. Thank you for helping. I guess the climate's solved now. Coming up next, we're going to talk about some changes Trump's making to the cabinet. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.